Taking a look at the trading week beginning October 6th, we may see some of the postponed economic data from last week this coming week, and earnings will also begin quietly. When I list out the critical economic data next week, it's going to seem like a huge data week, but that's because a lot of the data that was postponed at the end of this past week due to the government shutdown is scheduled for release this coming week. But that could also, of course, be postponed again, depending on whether we see any progress with the government shutdown talks. So that will be critical to watch. Some company earnings will be released next week, and those will likely be the biggest factor for risk assets, of course, if the government shutdown continues. Also, watch gold next week. As the 3 weeks of higher bond yields has now ended, yields fell last week between 4 and 7 basis points, depending on what part of the curve you're looking at. Despite those 3 weeks of higher yields, though, gold continued to rally, and it hit another new record high this past week, stemming from a weakened U.S. dollar, policy uncertainty involving the coming Fed easing cycle, possibly augmented by the shutdown, and heightened safe haven buying during perceived geopolitical instability globally. On top of that, there's no sign of an end to central bank purchases of gold, so there's lots of tailwinds for the precious metals. Now, earnings and economic data next week, 10 companies with market caps over $1 billion will be reporting earnings, marking the unofficial start of Q3 earnings season. The most important companies to watch are PepsiCo, Delta Airlines, Constellation Brands, McCormick and Company, Applied Digital, and Tilray Brands. Data on Monday, we get speeches by ECB President Christine Lagarde and Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey. Also, U.S. construction PMI and Japanese household spending. Tuesday, we get German factory orders and U.S. inflation expectations. Also, speeches from Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic, Fed Governor Michelle Bowman, and Minneapolis Fed President Neel Kashkari. Wednesday, German industrial production, U.S. construction spending, and the FOMC minutes from the last meeting, as well as another speech from Neel Kashkari, and also a speech from Fed Vice Chair for Supervision Michael Barr. Thursday, we get minutes from the last ECB rate meeting, jobless claims in the U.S., Fed Chair Jerome Powell is speaking, although it's scheduled to only be introductory comments. Michelle Bowman again, and San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly. And then Friday, employment data in Canada, possibly the non-farm payrolls data in the U.S., and Michigan consumer sentiment and inflation expectation data in the U.S.